In George Orwell's book, 1984, written in 1948, he predicted a world where security cameras would record the movements of everyone in the world, with severe consequences for anyone who would dare to go against the system. 1984 came and went without much concern. Of course, there were signs of government control back then, but not much. Now, however, less than 35 years later, we are starting to see this same type of totalitarian government come into existence right before our eyes. And it is happening in a country that is so notorious for human rights abuses that it could be compared with Orwell's dystopian prediction. And tragically, there seems to be almost nothing that the human race can do to stop it. In a documentary published by the ABC in Australia, a computerized system of control for more than 1 billion Chinese citizens was examined by foreign correspondent journalists, and it has all the characteristics of exactly what Orwell predicted. China calls its system a social credit system. On the surface, it may not look much worse than the control that some Western countries have had over their population for some time. This is most notable in the area of evaluating people's financial credit scores. Not paying your bills on time for almost anything could risk you being put on a credit score blacklist, after which it becomes particularly difficult to buy anything with credit, rent property, or to get a loan. Fear of being marked for life as a financial credit risk keeps millions of Americans, for example, constantly striving to pay all their bills on time. But China has already surpassed this and has plans to go beyond. The ABC report found that simple behaviours like crossing the road in the wrong place, buying too much alcohol, or being the friend of someone who has criticised the government is enough to affect your computer-generated credit score in China. All of these behaviours and more are tracked through millions of security cameras using facial recognition software that operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. While people with high scores receive special privileges, the government predicts an increase in punishments for those with a low score. The plan already seriously restricts the movements of many people who are considered to be a social risk by the government. An official source from the government boasted that offenders would not be able to move an inch. There are other countries where a person's religious beliefs could restrict them from getting a job or receiving benefits from the government. So China's not the first place that has tried to suffocate political and religious dissidents. But in China, things will most certainly get worse than that. Right now, meditation groups, conservative Muslims, and even Christians who worship in their own homes instead of the government-sanctioned church buildings can be detained, tortured, and executed without any accountability on behalf of the leaders of the Communist Party who organise it all. And it is all justified on the basis that all of this is necessary to maintain order in such a large country where dissidents, they say, could escalate and become dangerous rioting. If China's social credit system is combined with the country's previous cruel and arbitrary religious persecution, we would have a country that not only reflects what George Orwell predicted 70 years ago, but also what Jesus and the Revelation predicted 2,000 years ago. The Revelation mentions a world where each person has a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, without which they cannot buy or sell, where there is some kind of image that speaks. This image, according to the book of Revelation, can identify those who do not serve the final system and has authority to kill them. The final world leader is described as the devil incarnate, and the devil and his government are symbolized by a red dragon. China is already practically the leader of the present world's superpowers. Its economic tentacles are reaching almost all countries around the world, while the United States struggles to keep up with the control that it already has. China now uses economic sanctions to force other countries to cooperate with its goals. And China is building a universal database system that registers every person in the world and striving to create an artificial intelligence that can control that data and keep everybody submitted and obedient. So much economic and technological power, and taking into account how China and previous communist governments have treated Christians, gives us a sober image of what the future could be like for those of us who are serious about following the teachings of Jesus. Even now, it's practically impossible to find any country that would dare to oppose China. What Hitler did in the Second World War and what Stalin did a short time later could soon pale in comparison as China brings its version of totalitarian world domination. And it is already starting to do that through the most advanced computer technologies in the world. Are you ready for what is coming? There does not seem to be a way to stop China's incessant march towards world domination and total control of every person in the world, as China becomes part of the final beast described in the book of Revelation. Every Christian in the world needs to recognize now the possibility that the liberty that many of us have taken for granted for decades is now coming to an end. We may be reaching soon that time in which the only way we can show our loyalty to Christ is through martyrdom. How seriously are you considering that cost of discipleship? We are calling all Christians to step out of their lukewarmness now, to start living according to the teachings of Jesus, to literally forsake all possessions, secular jobs, and start forming teams of disciples that dedicate themselves to working for God full time, building one another up and strengthening each other spiritually now, regardless of how long it'll be until Jesus comes back. So if you are someone who wants to leave the system and be a disciple of Jesus and live according to his teachings, write to us at the address on screen so we can put you in touch with the community of disciples who are closest to your location.